DNA family. We are so glad you are back to joining us. This evening, we have Miss Shatoria. She is joining our platform to talk a little bit about her journey with infertility and that process. Miss Shatoria, thank you for coming. We really
Absolutely.
glad to have you. The floor is yours. Just share a little bit about what's on your heart and your story.
Infertility. So how can we start? We started our infertility journey actually in 2010, the year that we got married. Found out that I had a serious case of endo. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking I should be good. Stayed sick for a couple of years. And so we went through multiple surgeries. Well, I went through multiple surgeries.
Mhm.
The laparoscopic, and then it was, hey, let's put you on depot, let's do all this stuff. And so it was just coming draining. So being military, we did IUI first and did not take. And I think that crushed every soul in my body at that time.
Mhm.
I depended on these things so much that it stressed me out. My mental state kind of went left. I got depressed. Don't talk to me. Don't bother. You can't invite me to no baby shower. Don't,
Right.
none of that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think by 2012, it was like one of those pick yourself up and try again. And so we decided, okay, we're gonna do IVF. Because my husband was totally against adopting. He already had a son, which is my big boy, and I wanted my own, but I was okay with adopting. I'm from a blended family, so I can adopt. He was
Mhm.
like, nah, we ain't adopting. So I'm like, what are we gonna do?
Mhm.
We requested to do IVF because at the time we were stationed in Oklahoma City at Tinker, and we requested to do IVF. Now, there's only a small amount of bases that do IVF. I think it's like 5 bases, and Texas is one of them, but they're one of the smallest. And they sent us a request back, was like, no. I think at that time I was just over it. I was done. My stress level was just through the roof.
Yeah.
So, I had to be reminded of my faith, like you have what you say. And when they told us originally we could not have kids, I went to the store and I bought this pink basket. I bought these pink clothes. I bought these little shoes. And I was like, a kid is going to wear these. And people really thought I was crazy.
Mhm.
And when we got assignment to DC. That was nothing but God with the assignment to DC because I got a position that my rank didn't qualify for, my background check didn't qualify for, my credit didn't qualify for, but God made it possible for me to get the assignment. And when I told my doctor about the assignment, she was like, "Oh, that's where the biggest military IVF clinic is." And she was like, "You need to do IVF when you get there." And I was like, "That's a lot of money."
Mhm.
So um, I got up here and I never forget that Mother's Day weekend, I made an appointment to see my new doctor. And I went in and I was blunt with him. I was like, hey, this is the situation. And it was my first time meeting him. And I was expecting him to be like, well, let's do A, B, C, and D. And he was like, well, since you've already done these things, even though I haven't looked at your records yet, we're going to go ahead and do the paperwork. And I was like, okay. And he did all the paperwork, no questions asked. That was a Monday. By that Wednesday, they had me send all my paperwork up to Walter Reed,
Mhm.
and by Friday, we had an approval, and this was in May.
Wow.
I was geeked. I was nervous because I was like, "Where's this money gonna come from?" The bill was 7K, and I was like, 7K, that's a lot. And really, IVF is way more than that. But
Yeah.
because of us being active duty, TRICARE paid for meds. So that was a plus. So God made it to where, which I didn't know the finance piece of it, the military paid for my TMO move and my drive move. So we got double portion. And then my husband came 2 weeks after me. So we got that money too. And that actually equal up to us paying them.
Wow.
So it really worked out. Um, we made a decision that fall to go ahead with the procedure, and everybody kept saying it's not going to work the first time, you're going to have to wait and do it again, it never works the first time. And I had to learn, then I had to cut everybody off. um, I had to cut people off, people that just their faith just wasn't there.
Mhm.
And I just didn't need the negativity because I'm looking at the meds that I got to take and the injections, and I'm like, "Ooh, this is a lot."
Mhm.
Um, and so I just needed to be in a clear headspace. And so for about 60 days, I made a personal page on Facebook that was all about getting pregnant and going through the IVF. And we literally had maybe 30 people in there. That was it. Nobody else knew the process, nobody knew anything. And being military, um, it was cool. However, comma, we still had a lot of women who was not supportive in the process of me going through IVF.
Mhm.
Um, Being here worked out because I'm able to go to the doctor at 4 o'clock in the morning to be checked. And going through that and working was almost a butt head.
Mhm.
It was stressful, really stressful. So it was one of those things I had to stay prayed up. I had to be in faith because I already got people over here not in faith, and I got the job over here doing what they're doing, and it was just I need a timeout.
Yeah.
So I never forget. I got pregnant naturally right before we did IVF, and I was so geeked. But then I had a miscarriage in the same week,
Mhm.
and my whole faith was like, okay, we got to get back on. And when I started the IVF process with the injections, um, Satan know how to play a role. So I had another friend going through it at the same time as me, and she had like more follicles than I did, and I was like, well, God, I don't have as many follicles. I don't understand. And hers was bigger than mine. And I was like, God, I'm confused. And then when I go to my doctor's appointment, they'd be like, they didn't grow anymore. We need them to grow. And I'm like, okay, my faith is slowly decreasing. And
Yeah.
God was like, you got to cut people out. You can't look at this person. Everybody is different. I was like, okay. And so I remember we call it the egg transfer and the retrieval. And I remember that surgery. And I'm like, okay, God, this is all you.
Mhm.
And I woke up from that surgery and they had taken 25. And I'm a big numbers person. So, that equals 7. So I was like, okay, God, 25. Okay. And I never get getting the phone call the third within 3 days. The next day I got the call that said, hey, out of the 25, 13, was really good. But out of the 13, yeah, only 5, made it thus far. And I was like, crap. Okay. All right. Um, I never forget it was a Saturday, and they called me, which is considered the third day, and they called me and was like, out of the 5, it's doing good, but only 3 really took. The only 3 are really fertilizing. So I'm gonna give it the 2 more extra days. And my birthday, my 31st birthday, was the next day, that Sunday, and I won't lie, I was crushed because I'm thinking this ain't gonna work.
Mhm.
My eggs are not gonna work. You know, and I never forget my birthday that Sunday. I was tired. I was bloated with all the medications and the injections, and my faith was wavering. But I didn't want to show that I kept a smile on my face. But I was a little bit distraught. Trying to stay in faith is a struggle when you have others around you that's not so much, and you are in a place where with us just moving here at that time, we had some church family, but I still felt like I was alone in this process. I had no one to talk to or anything because everybody was so secretive about infertility.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm up here in DC. I was out there with you guys for 7 years. So I'm in DC by myself. And it's like, I'm struggling. And I never forget a friend of mine, her mom looked at this picture that they took of me on my birthday that evening. And she messaged me that night and was like, you're pregnant. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take this word, God. I'm going to take it. I'm going to hold it because she had told me earlier that year in June, by this time, you're going to have a baby in your arms. I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. And
Mhm.
when she said you're pregnant, it like they gave me that boost.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, God, all right, I'm pregnant. I'm going to receive that. I never forget going into that doctor's office uh, November 4th. And the doctor was like really skittish. And he came in. I really had to pee because it's transfer day.
Mhm.
He's sitting there and he was like, I've never seen this before. And I'm like, okay, what is he talking about? He said, well, out of the 3, we have 3 really good ones. I'm only pulling one back because they were such high grades. and he considered the grade, he called it a 5 AA. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. And he said, well, he said the only time you see like a 5 AA is in a textbook. You don't see a 5 AA. He said, hence the reason I'm only going to put one back. And I said, well, what was the grades of the other two? He was like 5 AAs. He's like, you have what we call a perfect embryo. And I remember just crying. And he was just like, you don't see that. He's like, I don't know if you're a faith believer, what you are, but he's like, we don't ever see it. So he put one back, and my husband told me we're not going to test at home. We're going to wait. We're not going to, I was like, oh, he was like, no, we're going to be in faith. We're not going to do nothing. We're going to wait. And hard part is waiting.
Yeah, for sure.
People like, oh, this is a rough 9 days. And
Yeah.
I remember the miscarriage because at this time, my mother, when I had the miscarriage, my numbers at that time was 20, and then they went down to 7 when I had the miscarriage. And I never forget my mom. My mom said, God is going to bless you with double what was lost. And so when we got the results back for this pregnancy, I never forget it. I missed the phone call. And I think, God does things divinely. I missed her call. My phone did not ring, but she left a message. I never forget, I was in blues. I felt fat that day. It was just a lot. I was emotional. And I had already been up since like 4 because I had to get my blood work done. And I never forget the nurse, Michelle. I still got the voicemail. She called me and was like, your numbers is 201. And I hit the floor in tears. Like, I'm literally about to cry now. I hit the floor in tears. And I told my husband, but I called my mom. And my mom was like, I told you he was going to do 100 times. And she's like, and he went one over.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, with infertility, it doesn't stop there,
Mm-hmm.
because now I'm having to deal with being pregnant and God, can I make it today? Can I make it today? My husband was living week by week. I was literally living day by day. Um, it's one of those things where you got people around you who go through what you go through, and they're having miscarriages after we doing IVF. And we kept the pregnancy from a lot of people private until we hit the 12th week mark. And it was one of those things, I kid you not, I did my hardest not to think of the negative. I was like, oh, it's gonna be good, but you can't help it. It's one of those things that it happens, and you like, I want to feel and I want to do this. And in that time of the infertility, me and my mom had gotten close the last 9 months she was on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she talked me through a lot. But I learned during the infertility time, you're never alone. You're with people, and God had to show me that time. Don't be afraid to talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
because then somebody else needs to hear it.
Right.
And it was one of those things that I had to remember. Yeah, Tori, you talk a lot, but it's always empowering in those things. So talk about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized it caused a lot of people to hate me, but then it caused a lot of people to call me and be like, hey, son Christian, can I talk to you about this?
Mm-hmm.
I got this going on. How did you go about it? And I'm able to give that information. But then at the same time, I'm able to be that person to help them get through it, the miscarriages and the whole entire nine. And I, I've learned infertility is not for the faint heart. IVF is not for the faint heart, but it also taught me to be very humble, but at the same time to know that faith is real, that these things are real. It's for a reason, because I question God a lot. Why do I got to go through IVF? I ain't gonna. I was like, if I can, I had a true jealousy for people
Mm-hmm.
for years. It was like, dang, they get pregnant, and
Yeah.
being a event planner, but can you do my baby shower? And I was like, oh
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want to be a baby shower. Well, can you watch the kids? And you love the kids, but when you want and desire your own. And God also had to show me that your own didn't always necessarily mean blood.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that I learned over time. Infertility can take the life out of you if you let it.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal, especially while I was pregnant, I lost a lot while I was pregnant. My mom passed while I was pregnant. So it was one of those things that scared me when my mom passed, and then not just doing infertility, but again, trying to make it to having a baby by itself. I never forget her birth was absolutely one of the things that scared me because I would go days where I didn't feel her, nothing like that. And my husband was like, it's just in your head. I'm like, something is not right. This is not right. I wasn't able to enjoy the pregnancy because in my spirit, I felt some just ain't it. God, what's going on? There was many days I thought I was going to lose her. There's many days I thought I'm not bringing her home. There's many days I literally kept the two embryos in storage as a just in case.
Yeah.
Um, and you're not supposed to be that way, but that's just really how I felt, just in case.
Yeah.
Um, and I walked around the job as if I was okay and I wasn't okay.
Mhm.
Because anytime I said something was wrong, there's nothing wrong.
Mhm.
Um, so it was just one of those scenarios you got to pray your way through. And now I would say people are very vocal about it.
Yeah.
They're very vocal about infertility. I'm 100% behind anyone with it because it's, I think my quiet support system and the crazy part, my support system, a lot of them were distant.
Mhm.
And I missed the hug and the love that I needed at that moment.
Right.
Um, so, with her, going into the hospital with her was not traditional. It was, she's not moving. And I literally had people tell me I was crazy. I was like, well, I should be high risk. No, you're not. You're fine. And I never forget when they decided to take her, she was not breathing for about 3 weeks on her own.
Wow.
And when they took her, the doctor that took her was like, did you get your 20-week? And I was like, well, yeah. She was like, yeah, your umbilical cord is not measuring correctly. So after she was born, she was in NICU. She was early, but a lot of the things that I felt was not done. And so one of the things I always tell people now is get thoroughly checked, ask every question. Um, Being a mom to an IVF baby takes a lot of courage, a lot of faith, a lot of prayer, a lot of support. Um, and it's okay to be in tears. It's okay to cry.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things I've learned over the years that the children I have lost before all have a name,
Mhm.
and it is okay to give them names and to know that they was formed
Mhm.
and they was formed for a reason and a season.
Right.
Um, my heart goes out to any woman, any person going through it because it's a tough thing, but I always remind people be careful with what you say. Like, when you gonna have a baby and what's the or the biggest one, it'll happen in God's timing. It's those words that I've come to learn that they don't understand, they don't know.
Yeah.
They just say it and not always malice, but it's off the fact that they don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so like I said, my biggest encouragement to women is like I'm here. People text, call, email, whatever, Facebook, because I've learned we're not in this by ourselves. We're
Right.
in this with somebody. Biggest thing is respect a person's decision,
Mhm.
and love them regardless, because you don't know their inner feelings.
Mhm.
We smile on the outside, and on the inside we are crushed.
Yeah.
Not that I cannot birth any more kids. There's days that I am completely crushed.
Mhm.
Um, and I see my daughter now, and she wants a playmate, but at the same time, it's a crush. I made the decision not to use the other embryos, but at the same time, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I can't do anything about it now besides adopt if I wanted to.
Right.
So I've learned over these years with everything, it's okay, it's
Mhm.
all right.
Mhm.
Um, Use it as a stepping stone, use it as a voice,
Right.
and make it make you strong,
Right. Yeah.
if anything. So that is our little story.
I love it. And one thing I loved about your story, let's rewind a little bit. Um, when the doctors told you that you could not have children, you said, all right. And you went to the store and started buying not just any kind of clothes, little girl clothes.
I
Like
did.
that I love because it shows where your faith was and who you were listening to and what you were listening to.
And she still has the basket. She literally just broke the mirror. Um, she still has the little shoes. I bought these purple and black Juicy Couture shoes she wore for her first birthday photos. We still have those. And my faith was so strong. I took my wedding dress from Maron's first wedding, had it turned into her christening gown. Like I had an old school christening gown, bib, the head. And we actually, again, I'm big on numbers. We did it on her 10th month.
Mhm.
April, which is her daddy's birthday, April 25th birthday. So her birthday is June 19th. We did it on April 19th. We did her christening that day. And the crazy part, people was literally like, well, I don't understand why you can't change her christening. Look at here.
Yeah.
But we're not doing. Um, but I do. I laugh when I see that basket because she used the basket now for
Mhm.
she put out her books. And me and my husband, we laughed because it reminds us. Because he thought I was crazy when I came home with that stuff. He was like, "Why you have all this stuff?" And I was like, "We're having a baby, and it's a girl." He's
Yeah.
like, "What?" And he bought me a butterfly journal. I never forget. After my first laparoscopic surgery, he bought me a butterfly journal, and I started writing in a journal to her. I literally still have that journal to this day.
Mhm.
And so it's one of those things, like you said, my faith had to be in it.
Yeah.
When I went to this, I would never tell anyone that I was not afraid because I'd be lying. I would never tell anyone I wasn't nervous. I would be lying. I would never say I didn't have bad thoughts because I'd be lying. All those things happened, and God had to put me back in check. But He put me back in check in different ways. Like one of the ways He definitely put me back in check was when we moved here. We stayed on base, and I unpacked everything but one room, which was the bonus room. I didn't unpack it. I came home from work one day, and mind you, when we was going through IVF, my husband was not working at all. We had just moved here, and he cleaned out that whole room and had this picture on the wall, and he was like, "This is where the crib is gonna go. This is where the picture gonna go. This is where the dress is gonna go. We're gonna get a chair, and it's gonna go right here." And that melted my heart because now he has the faith that I have
Mhm. And
for
you're
the
on the same
process.
page.
Yeah, we was on the same page at that time. And
Mhm.
God had to show me we had to be together.
Right.
But one of the things that God also had to show me was it's not the most popular opinion, but I had to do some forgiving before He allowed me to be pregnant.
Right.
I had a lot of unforgiveness with my parents, and I'm talking about both my mother and my father. I never forget a really close friend of mine made me get a mirror and look at it and talk to my dad as he was sitting there. And then
Mhm.
I never forget when I moved up here, God had sent me home first to Georgia on the way through. And me and my mom had the most heartfelt conversation. My mom hadn't raised me since I was 10. I was raised by my grandmother. And
Mhm.
so I had this heartfelt conversation with my mother, and I found out things like my mother had endo. My mother had a miscarriage before she gave birth to any of my siblings. So it's four of us. My mother was pregnant 8 times.
Mhm.
So I was able to, so that's why for me, the last 9 months of my mother was vital for me because if you think about it, we're pregnant for 9 months. So
Mhm.
from April 2013 to January 2014, my mother was vital for me.
Mhm.
Um, so I take that relationship and I cherish even that moment because at that time I didn't have a mother. I had a mom for
Mhm.
9 months. And right the week before she passed, I went to Georgia to go see her because she couldn't speak, but she can write and she can speak to where you can kind of see her words forming. But it was the first time she saw me pregnant. I was 13 weeks and she put her hand on my stomach and she was like, I'm so proud of you. And the last day I saw her, which was Martin Luther King Day, January 2014, and she was like, "That's a girl, and I'm going to watch her until it's time for her to come home." And I told her I would be okay.
Mm,
Um, I think my mother knew I was lying
mm,
because I wasn't okay. I remember leaving that hospital that night. The nurse saw me and she gave me the biggest hug because we knew mom is leaving. Like, I
mm.
knew that. And because I didn't live in the state, it was like, because in my head, it was like, I need her here for this time. You know, I'm pregnant. This is my
Right.
first kid I'm birthing. And I was like, God, I just got my mom back. And I remember God was like, and it reminds me of Esther 4 and 14 when it says, for a moment, right, for this moment right here. And I remember he was talking, he said, I needed that moment. I needed that hug, that last kiss.
Yeah.
And the day my mother passed, I woke up that morning and Janae was in my womb moving. That was the first time I really felt her just like going at it. And I got a call 2 hours later, and my sister was like, she's gone. And it was one of those things that I still take with me to this day. My mom was like, I'm with you until she comes home. She's like, I got you, don't worry about it. And I remember moving into the house we're in now, and we was unpacking and whatever. And Janae was one, and she was sitting at my desk that I have right now, and she looking at the pictures, and she saw a picture of my mom in her younger days, and she was like, Grandma. And I was like, who's that? She was like, Grandma. And she was like, I saw her. We play together. Um, it broke me. It broke me. And honestly, that's the moment I realized we don't go through journeys alone. We don't go through these things alone. And I realized when I counted out the months, I said my mom was with me for those 9 months.
Yeah.
And I had to put things aside with her in order to have those moments.
Mm,
But those things also helped me have those moments with Janae.
right.
We have a very close relationship. She is my bugaboo. She is my broke, but I can't call her my broke best friend because she was like, I got money.
Right. She
So
she got a whole business now. So
like
don't
I'm,
come for me. I got a whole business, mama.
she actually did tell me the other day, she asked for crab legs and was like, I said, you got crab leg money? She was like, hey, I got a bank account. And I was like, okay. But these are the things that I had to learn that I can't allow my past to dictate. Because I won't lie to you, I questioned God a long time,
Yeah.
saying I wasn't worthy of being a mother for some of the things that I have done. And my
Yeah.
mom had to tell me, she was like, that doesn't qualify you.
Yeah.
She's like, God qualifies you. And she's like, He's already forgiven you. So I need you to learn to forgive yourself. And I was like, oh. And I know this, I'm a faith person.
Yeah.
But to hear it from my mom, it was like, all right, I
Right.
can do this. So when I got pregnant in July, I was like, yes, all right. And to
Mm,
have a miscarriage, I won't say I went through the miscarriage alone. What I did do, I came home from work that Friday and Ron was home. He was laying down sleeping. He's like, you good? I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. And I went upstairs and I remember Garen took a shower because I knew it was coming.
mm,
I told my job, and my particular E9 was awesome. I was like, sir, I'm in the middle. I said because they was already tracking because
mm.
this is Monday through Friday, literally.
Right.
Monday I found I was pregnant. Wednesday numbers started to go down. Friday it was like yeah. So I told my sergeant, I was like, sir, I'm about to have a miscarriage. She said, go home. And I never forget. I walked in the house and Mariah was like, you good? She's like, yeah, I'm good. And I went and took a shower. Well, before I took a shower, I was like, let me go to the restroom. And I saw with my own eyes. And I
Mm,
think I stared at it for like 30 minutes. Didn't
mm,
cry, didn't do anything. I got in the shower, called Ron upstairs. He's like, what's wrong? And I told him. He's like, what? You good? And I broke. I broke because it was like, I guess saying it out of my mouth.
right.
It was like, and I saw it.
You
It
became
was there.
hmm
Yeah. And it became a reality. I cried for a couple of hours and I kid you not, I can't say I don't know what it was, but it was nothing but God. I literally, my language started to change. It was like, we good. You did it once, you'll do it again. And
right.
I just kept saying that,
Mhm,
kept saying it.
mhm.
And God had to show me I did it and I do it again. And I'm
Yeah.
like, am I, do we need to do IVF?
Mhm,
Um, and I kept saying, why do we need to do IVF? Now I know why we need to do IVF.
mhm.
Because I was able to experience everything IVF and then be able to tell other people,
Right.
this is what it did. This is how I felt with it. You may not go through the same process, but A, B, C, and D. Oh yeah, here's the information.
Yeah.
And then I met so many women from like I was faithful on Baby Center, and Baby Center had a IVF board, and I stayed in that board, and we talked, we did all of this. So even after I got pregnant with Janae and I went through it, I met these moms who all was going through, and we just went through together to this day. And we're talking about 7 years later. We are literally, and the crazy part, 99% of us have not met in person.
Right.
And we were on each other Facebook. We've seen each other kids' birthday presents. Unfortunately, I've watched friends still not get pregnant. I've watched friends get pregnant. The child is born. We're doing great, and they still lose the child.
Right.
So it's one of those walks you walk through that I've learned I got to be strong, not just for myself, but everything is a purpose and a reason. And I'm not going to sit here and say I have the ride has been an enjoyable ride. It's definitely been a roller coaster, but I would not change anything about
Yeah.
what we've gone through. It has tested my husband's moral faith than anything.
Mhm.
As we're now this faith couple, like you said, we on one accord on things. So we be talking and we be like, okay, what we praying for? Oh, we there? Okay, we
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And now people will look at me and be like, because when I got pregnant with Janae, I spoke a lot of things that year. I said, we're going to have a baby. We're going to build a house and I'm making rank. I kid you not. I had her in 2014, 2015. I made rank and we bought a house and clothes all at the same time. And people was like, okay. Um, but God showed me who was for me then, who was with me.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't regret the ride. I don't regret nothing of it. It's been worth every bit. Um, and he showed me my calling when it comes to that. And so I'm here and I'm stronger than ever. I'm behind many women,
Right.
men, couples who are, going through it because I don't want anybody to feel like I did,
Right.
feeling alone.
Right.
Um, it is a feeling that can depress you when you feel like you're completely by yourself, especially women when they husbands is like, I don't get it,
Yeah.
but we do.
Right.
I can be that in between for you and for everybody to understand. So it's been a ride, but again, the blessing is there. As Janae gets older, I have a book that I made that I will give to her to explain. I actually still have both pregnancy tests, the one that I lost and the one with her that I took later after I found out I was pregnant. And we have a box with her bracelet and my bracelet, and I kept her shoes. I still have her christening gown. So when she gets older, to,
Yeah.
to really understand, we plan to actually sit and be like, this is what we did.
I think your story is so beautiful. And I love how your journey was unique. Here we are talking about infertility, and everybody who falls under that umbrella has a unique journey underneath that topic. And your story may not look like someone else's story or someone else. And you have to have foundation on this journey. You have to have that faith built, because you will begin, like you stated earlier, you'll begin to look at other people and start comparing, like, Lord, why come I don't have this? Or why come this isn't working out like this for us? And you have to be in tune. Okay, like, Lord, what do you have for me? What is it that you want us to do? And you have to be, that's where your focus has to be, not on someone
Everybody else.
else's journey or someone else's story, because you could easily get distracted and miss out on your blessing. And so I love how you had to, shift and refocus your thoughts.
Yeah, like you said, and the military aspect, a lot of people don't realize how much the military actually support and actually how much the military helps, especially in 2020. The military is now doing a reproductive survey and seeing what's really going on because we're having a lot of issues with infertility, with the reproduction system of women. So the
Yeah.
military is now like, okay, let's really see what the problem is. We have a high rate of hysterectomies and everything because women
Yes.
are going through a lot.
Yeah.
So I will say I'm truly blessed that the military paid for at least the meds when it came down to IVF, because IVF costs
Yeah.
15 to 30K alone. And so when I asked the question, like, well, what does 7,000 cover? And they literally gave me a breakdown sheet. I was like, oh, okay. It's literally the procedure and the things that go into it. But what I love about going through the military, and nothing against the civilian sector, but going through the military, they are so by the book.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of those things, when I laugh about it now, when they talked about Altamom, they was like, look, we literally look at, because the question came up, well, how many do you put back? And they broke it down. It was like, look, we look at your age, we look at your history, we look at the type of eggs that you wind up having, how do they fertilize. We don't just be like, hey, we're gonna put in 4 and see what happened. It's literally a scientific way of how they do things, because they're like, we're looking at the health of you overall.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated that, because it was like they took the time to be like, okay. And it wasn't just like you said, the uniqueness of it. When we went into a group meeting and they gave us our meds, nobody's, they call them the plans. Nobody plans was the same.
Right.
You know, I had a woman next to me who, she can produce a whole bunch of follicles, but they wasn't growing.
Mhm.
I can produce follicles and they can grow. So we're on 2 different regimens of type of meds. Um, I went the full 2 weeks a shot. They usually don't go past the 2 weeks, but I went the full 2 weeks. I think she went a week, and now so everybody is definitely different. Um, the journey is not the same. I do have friends who've done the journey twice. Excuse me. I do have friends that have done it more than twice, and then there's some of us who've done it once.
Mhm.
I have friends who just said, "Forget it, I'm gonna die." So the difference, yeah, we all look under the same umbrella, infertility.
Right.
Um, but we come out from the storm very differently.
Yeah.
Um, our rainstorms is all different, but I look at it like it's that rainbow at the end.
Yeah.
However you get to that rainbow, it is there. And
Yeah.
so, we just got to our rainbow, actually getting pregnant,
Mhm.
living day by day. And like I said, being born early, and I'm stressing out. And I was just forever grateful that I had the opportunity to at least carry her. And I was like, okay, God, I don't want you to take away
Yeah.
however come. You know, I thank you for, allow me to be that vessel. And so that's the prayer I always pray for any parent that's going through, because you just never know what they're going through, especially in this umbrella of infertility. It's People are struggling to get to that rainbow. So I never hate on anyone who kept the pregnancy a secret. I never hate on anyone who, when I see pictures now and they have like the syringes without the needle, but they have the syringes around, I'm over there like, yes. I get excited because I've seen a lot of tears, a lot of funerals. I've seen a lot.
Mhm.
So I appreciate however they go through their journey,
Yeah.
and I support them however they need to be supported. A hug, love, a card,
Right.
you just give it to them. So
And
it's
I think, what's important is that we keep in mind that it's God that brings that rainbow. And so when it comes to seeking answers and seeking peace on that journey, we have to trust that God is the one who provides that peace. He's the one who brings on that. And so that is our source. That is who we have to go to. And one thing I love about your story is, when talking about this journey, it improved your marriage, and how you were able to get to that rainbow when you let go of the things that were aborting your baby, and you both came on one accord. You came together, you let go of that unforgiveness, you let go of that pain, and then you both came on to the same page, and then you were able to be
Yep.
productive. You were able to produce. I love that.
I definitely, the way you just said it just got me thinking again. And I was like, I thought about Hannah, and I laugh because throughout my marriage, I have taken the women of the Bible and they've been implemented in certain parts of my marriage. And Hannah was definitely the one that I studied a lot during that time, because, a woman who has none and she's crying. And it was like, I never forget the day God was like, it's time for you to forgive. And sometimes we walk around here and don't realize that we haven't really forgave. We can say it, And my husband cracks jokes at me, but he said, and a couple of friends, they'll tell me the same thing. It was like, you have that childlike love for people. No matter how much wrong they do, you still love on them. And, I didn't really get that way until after I really forgave my mother, because I realized I cannot miss a blessing because of unforgiveness. I just can't afford it, and I can't do it, because I realized, even though God's timing is great, I realized in my head, I was going, man, if I had forgave a long time ago, I think
Right.
I'm here right now. Like,
You
hold on.
could have had 30 kids.
What, Jesus? Did I miss a call or something? Hold on, wait a second. So I laugh about it, and I'll be like, oh. And so now at this stage in my life, it's like I got things to do. So I refuse to walk in unforgiveness. I look at people who come for me, as I call it, because they don't know.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I know how to handle you with, a long tooth comb, as your mama used to say, but I'm gonna still walk in love with you. And like I said, they be cracking jokes, and they be like, I don't know how you do it. I just can't. And my husband's like, you just got that gift. Like, oh. And but it's one of those things to, when you go through things in life, some things makes you just absolutely humble. And moving to DC and having to go through the IVF process is definitely one thing that completely made me humble. And honestly, speaking to my mother and knowing her situation, because I won't lie and ask, and I didn't care. But when I got to that point of forgiveness, and she was like, no, sweetie, I was pregnant with a child before you. And then when she started to break it down, I was like, wait, for real? She was like, yeah. She was like, I've had 4 miscarriages. I'm going, the what? So to see my mother in a whole nother light was definitely an on point thing, because a lot of times you don't think people have gone through it because it ain't talked about. And
Right.
that's one thing my mom said. She was like, people don't talk about infertility. It's one of those things that we can't talk about that because you look shunned upon. And I went years thinking something wrong with me as a woman, as a wife. I questioned God. I was like, well, Ron could just find somebody else that can give him a kid because this just ain't working. And God was like that. And he was like, this ain't Sarah and Abraham. I promise you, when God told me that, I was like, oh, wait. I can't deny. You know, you had them conversations with yourself, but you're talking to God. And I heard him say, this is not Sarah and Abraham. I was like, okay. So I just learned to just trust God in it. And then, like you said, when Ron caught that faithfulness, and I came home to that boosts my faithfulness, my energy, because it was like, oh, he got faith too. Oh, they ain't gonna do now with the Christian household. And now I have this 6-year-old who, like you said, she owned her own business. And it's crazy because she was born early, and I laugh because the lady who told me in June of 2013 you're gonna have a child at this time, Janae's due date was the end of July. So when I gave birth to Janae, that was on the 19th. I remember clearly that woman told me that on the 27th of June 2013. So 27th of June 2014, we was at a wedding. Yes, I gave birth to Janae on the 19th, and I was at a wedding a week later. But she was a NICU, ain't nothing I could do.
Right.
But the lady, we was cracking up, and she said, I told you a year ago. I said, you did. And look at us now. I have a whole newborn sitting in NICU. And now people look at Janae and it's like, oh, that's the miracle. And that's what a lot of my coworkers call her. Oh, that's the miracle baby right there. There she go. And it gives me joy because people see her as the faith God had placed in me.
Right. She
Um,
is a reflection of that faith.
and so, with the book that I wrote, I call it She is the Birth of Forgiveness.
Mm.
And I say that because I had to forgive to get her. You know, I had to remember my womb was toxic. They talk about closed womb. My womb was toxic, and there was no way I was going to be able to bring a child that has a calling on their life and all of this into a place that we're sitting in now if I didn't have the true faithfulness that I needed and the forgiveness that I needed to do. So now she's just a ball of joy, keep my house going, got her own business, and feisty all. But again, I can't call her my broke best friend because she'd be like, I'm not broke.
Yeah.
So, but so yeah, she's definitely I can't wait to tell her the story. I really can't. She she is definitely a joy. She is um she reminds me a lot. Like a lot of people didn't meet my mom before she passed, but she is definitely my mother.
Mhm.
Um I get joy with that. You know, it's not a day that don't go by that I don't miss her or my grandmother.
Mhm.
Um, but she's my mother. She has ways like my mother, but it's the way she carries herself. The life she has in her is the life I remember my mom having at one point in my life.
Mhm.
And my goal has always been to keep that light going for her.
Mhm.
Um, to show her that she is special and she's here for a reason. And there's times I'll be looking, I'll be talking, to myself, my husband said, but I'll be talking to my mom, my grandma, and I'll be like, man, we did it.
Mhm.
This is another generation right here. I'm the first granddaughter, third grandchild. My mother was the first daughter.
Mhm.
And so my goal is to make it to where when I leave this earth, my kids, and more so my daughter, because of the things we did to get her, can go back and be like, man, my mom had faith like nobody's business.
Right.
And that's people talk about legacies and monetary. I want to leave behind my faith walk. I want to leave behind the passion to just go for what you believe in and what God is showing you.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things I want to leave her with. And I, at 6 years old, she has a drive to run her own business, and it's like, I want to do this. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And that gives me joy. And so I thank God on the daily for giving me the opportunity to go through IVF
Mhm.
to get to that.
Right.
Um, I don't think I would appreciate as much as I do now, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Mhm. And I just love it. And I think your story is encouraging to women, and more specifically, women in the military, because it's not really a topic that's embraced, especially in the military. Thankfully, they are making those changes, and I'm grateful for that. But a lot of times, that subject is not really embraced in the military. And I just love how you are the pillar of that, and you can help women who are on that side, kind of go through that journey and help them along the way. So that's beautiful.
Well, thank you, my love.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Thank you,
And I
love.
know
It's
there's
really
healing,
awesome.
there, and I appreciate you turning your pain into purpose. I think that is key, and that is why we go through things in life,
Mhm.
because we know at the end of it, all things work together for the good, and we know that at the end God gets that glory. And so I appreciate you sharing your story, being transparent, and I love it.
Thank you, my love. It's definitely awesome to be able to share it and blessing someone else who
Yes.
needs to hear it.
Yes. Well, ma'am, I appreciate you coming on. Um,
Absolutely. Thank you
thank
for the
you.
opportunity.
Thank your husband, all of that. Renee, congratulations to all of her businesses. And
Yes,
that's funny. But yeah, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, I'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks, love.
Okay. Have a good one.
You too.